Hey, what's going on, everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Marvel Strike Force. I hope that you're having a great Thursday morning. Now, I've had some time to think about what has occurred over the last 24 hours, specifically the news that we received regarding these new Spotlight raids. I want to go, I kind of want to go into a little bit more detail now that I've, had that time to think. But also, we're going to be talking in this video whether or not going forward with this new news if characters are going to be skippable or not. Now, what do I mean by this? Like, because in the past, you could argue, and I've argued, that there have been characters or teams that have been skippable, which essentially means that, you can not build them, but it's not going to hurt your gameplay as such. So there are surprisingly a handful of characters where it made no difference, really, if you built them or not, because they weren't hard required for certain things. And so now that we know that there's going to be two teams, Spider Society was kind of, kind of soft, required, hard locked, kind of like for incursion raids, anyways. But now that we know that for Alpha Flight, which I don't think is actually going to be a raid team, I want to talk about this in greater detail. So if you're ready to go, and other stuff related to this that kind of I thought about as well. So if you're ready to go, let's boil this down. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to do a little bit of a brief history of Marvel Strike Force. This is my character spreadsheet. I'm going about a year and a half back now. I want to kind of cover some of these characters that I believe it didn't really like. They may have been good to have, right? And I want to make it clear that there's a difference between good to have, fun to use, good gameplay, whatever, right? Versus like hard required for an event of some degree, right? Because there is a handful of stuff that even I skipped that allowed me to save resources. Because as a free to play player, or pretty much free to play adjacent, whatever you want to call it, there's not enough resources in the game for you to build everything. It's just not. Right. And so there are times where I would keep a character at level 1 or very close to it. And I would use those T4s that I would receive in that time period or gold and put it towards something else. Right now, I'm doing a lot of that into red gear, but that also allows me to max out other characters and other teams that I think that are more deserving than some of these. So let's just go back to October of 2022, October, November, and there was War Dogs and Iron Man Zombie. Now I didn't really build Iron Man Zombie very high. I still haven't. He was like gear tier 15 maybe now. That I have him at. And I did take him to 14 or so before. I never took him really higher than that. He's still in the orange gear tier. War Dogs, almost a complete skip. I think I took them to like 70 for some reason. I'm not sure why exactly. And then I just stopped. Black Panther, Nakia did not really invest in the other Wakandans outside of Shuri, who I did take to Dark Dimension 6. I think. No, 6? 5? I don't know. She's gear tier. I don't remember now. But she's like in the teal gear somewhere. The rest of them I did not. This was the Wakandan reworks, I didn't touch them either. And so that's a good reason why I didn't really go much further in War Dogs. And I didn't need them. Like there were there events for them? I can't remember, honestly. But if there was, like I didn't actually have to use them. They may have been like alternatives. I can't there was a Wakandan thing for like for Archangel actually, so that's probably where you would have saw use. It was Wakandans or Bionic Avengers, I believe, and I didn't need them for this, so I was able to get like a 5-6 star whatever Archangel I got, and it was completely fine. So there are, if you can identify, usually not always, but usually it's like a PvP type character, or that I would say is skip, right? If it has arena value or if it has raid value, it kind of becomes essential, I think, or if it's hard required for a legendary event. Then we had Death Seed, of course, that was a raid team, Rebirth raid team, and then we had Masters of Evil. Now, they were hard required to use them to unlock Nova, but I actually did not at the time go very hard into characters other than Kang. I managed to get, I believe, I might have gone a 5-star, I don't remember, 4 or 5 star Nova on the first pass with very limited investment into Moonstone, Observing Man, Titania, and Ultron, and I just kind of like took Kang to the moon. And the rest of them were kind of lower. I kind of carried it a little bit. Maybe it was a bit tough. I think it was tough, but I didn't really need to do that, right? Like I didn't have to build them if I didn't want to. And so again, PvP type teams, I don't really regret this. The only two I have built up really high is Kang and Titania, and I'm kind of sometimes using them with Cabal, right? Different story about Cabal now because with the new details about Kiln, Might have to build those to the moon, so we'll see and find out. Let's move on though and talk about invaders raid team. So unfortunately, you kind of have to do that, right? This one was the first time where it was almost a full team. It was 4 new characters, so it was a lot. Quicksilver, I didn't actually build right away, but I built a bit later. Firestar, so new warriors is something that I ended up doing a little bit later. I had them from the original new warriors. I think them had 85 G16 on the original 3. But when it came to go out Firestar and Gwenpool, I very slowly leveled them, and even now I think I only have them at like 85, maybe 90. I didn't take Firestar to Dark Dimension 6, so it wasn't like a skip, but it was like a soft build. So there's some varying degrees of skip, right? There's like skip, like level 1 skip, and then there's like soft build, which is like something maybe you need for an event, like 75 or something like that. G14, maybe 85, G16, that kind of thing, where your investment is still not maxed out, but you're kind of using them for something, usually an event of some kind. That's kind of what I did with New Warriors. Now, Nowhere, you guys know I've talked about this time and time again, that aside from Nova, I did skip the entire team. And this was actually really great for me to recoup resources because, yes, they were usable in the Black Cat event, but I was actually able to, because Infestation came out around that time, I think. And so I was able to actually use Doc Ock and the Swarm rework to actually do a lot of things. I'm pretty sure Swarm was reworked at the time. So I was able to get a 5-star Black Cat without actually, I had Nova. But aside from that, I didn't have any of the other characters, and I was able to get a walk away with a 5-star. So it was pretty impressive, I think, actually. And as a result of this, they're still at level 1. And I was able to save like a month and a half worth of T4s, which allowed me to do everything else, essentially. So if you're free to play or free to play adjacent, and you're able to save this much resources going forward, it's really good. Vol, super. The next thing that I really skipped after this point, because I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, is I guess I kind of low built New Avengers. When they first came out, I didn't really put a ton of investment into them until later. I kind of regret that. I thought that they were going to have more dividends than like at a higher gear tier than I don't know why. I should trust my instincts. Don't take war teams to the moon unless there's a proven use for them outside of that. And then, of course, we have another raid team with Pegasus, Juggernaut Zombie, level 1, right? So every, like, when was that? Like, so between Nowhere, there's like, I don't know, like every 3 or 4 months, there's like something that's kind of skippable. Why am I talking about skippable, soft builds and whatnot? Is because now where we're at down here, Starbrand and Cosmic Ghost Rider. I didn't really take very high either. Starbrand's pretty low. So I know that we're gonna have to use Out of Time for a legendary event, but I'm really hoping that I can just carry this with Black Knight and Cap and Peggy Carter, because I really just don't want to build these two right now. Maybe if they become farmable and their stats are better for me, but I just like, that's another thing with low gear tier characters. Like, unless they're proven to be like absolutely insane, like I don't really want to go into some of these characters. So now we're into, Spider Society, and then there's going to be Mercs for Money. And honestly, I'm surprised that they're waiting until Alpha Flight to include a character, right? So we're basically looking at Spider Society, Mercs for Money, and then somewhere down here in like late May into June is going to be Alpha Flight. That's kind of the release order, I think, is what's going to happen. I'm kind of assuming that Mercs for Money is going to be 3 characters with a legendary, maybe 2 plus a legendary plus 2 reworks. That's kind of what I'm assuming at this point. But that doesn't really matter too much. What matters is really, what this means for us. And I think what this comes down to is because we know that Alpha Flight is probably not going to be a Mystic raid team, right? That's the only thing like on the horizon that's left on the raid side of things. And, I think they're definitely not going to be a raid team. So now this means you're not going to be able to skip these characters because you're being baited with the carrot of this new raid, which is going to hard require these teams, in this case, Spider Society and Alpha Flight. And the fact that it's called a Spotlight makes it just sound like it's essentially a showcase event with a raid appeal, right? And I don't know if that just means that maybe the sales are down, right? Maybe they're pushing these new teams to possibly more required than other teams were in the past because they don't want people to skip anything. They want to create FOMO for people to spend early and buy these characters early to start upgrading them for this raid. And this brings there's lots of questions, right, related to this kind of content that we're not going to see for probably about a month, because it's going to be quite a while before Alpha Flight comes out. But I don't like this idea of prescribing specific teams, which is funny because we're already being prescribed raid teams for Incursion, but I don't like it in the Gamma sense of things, right? the gamma raid. This is kind of like a new gamma raid. That's kind of how it feels like. We're being prescribed non-raid teams to use in raids because that's where gamma was. A lot of the teams in gamma were not specifically designed for raids, but you just had to use them and get through the nodes anyways, right? But this was one of the worst raids when it came to prescribing teams, and it was kind of slow to update. But if they, I'm willing to give it a shot because if it's as long as they update it regularly and they kind of change things every couple of months, right? Every 3 months. So that's kind of what I'm assuming is going to happen. Is that like every 3 to 4 months, we're going to get every new quarter or whatever. They're either gonna rotate or I hope they make new nodes, honestly. But I think that's what we're gonna see is that we're gonna see reasons to want to buy these teams or invest in these teams. I'm not gonna say buy the teams because they could very well be free to play available and we just don't know. And that's one question too. Is there going to be a yellow star requirement on using these characters in this new Spotlight raid? I hope not. And will these characters be free to play available in its entirety before the raid launches? I hope so. And so there are a lot of major question marks that kind of hang over this. And will the investment ultimately be worth it, right? AKA well, I'm gonna take Spider Society to the moon anyways, but if I take Alpha Flight to the moon, am I gonna have to do I have to G18 them for start? Like where is the top end of that? And how much T4s and how much red gear am I really getting? Let's not kid ourselves that upgrading a full character, upgrading a character from level 1 to 100 costs you 23.4 million gold. I think with all the other investments, the abilities and the gear and all that, it costs, I want to say close to 30 million, maybe 29 million, something around there. And so that's a lot, right? For new characters that are not specifically designed for raids, but were being made to do it anyways. And that's what's going to be the tough thing, because I think when it comes to alliance-based content, you're going to need to be on the same page as the rest of your team, right? And so the question is, like, does everybody need to have the team? The way that the raid map is designed has one team and then the next team, but it's in duo partnerships, right? And I know that this is all subject to change, but that almost suggests that depending on how hard and difficult the nodes are, that you might in fact be able to go a little bit, maybe say have one person, do the Spider Society section and have one person do the Alpha Flight section, or the nodes are actually that hard that it requires both of you to hit it in order to clear it. I mean, that's again, we don't know, subject to change, right? And what I don't like about potentially having every other team being hard required for this Spotlight raid is that it's going to create homogeneity in PvP. This was a complaint, I think, when it came to Apocalypse, right? Like when we had some of our top teams, it was Unlimited X-Men, it was Darkhold, it was Gamma, it was Destiny. Everyone had that, right? And so now in a PvE raid context, when you're prescribing War and Crucible teams, let's just assume that's that, right? Some of them are going to be raid teams like Spider Society, but a lot of them are probably going to be non-raid teams, right? And you're prescribing that to earn more raid gear, which everyone wants, and people are going to do it. And then you're going to see all this homogeneity in Crucible, where everyone's built this same set of characters to 95 plus because you're using them in this new raid. And you're going to be encountering the same sort of stuff. And that's what I'm concerned about. I actually liked it how it was before, where, we had a little bit more choice. For some, it might seem like an illusion of choice, but I do genuinely believe that there was, because I skipped some characters and I did not level to the moon certain teams and groups of characters. Like I said, actually Moonstone's 90, but maybe I did end up bringing them back up a little bit more. But you can see with the rest of my roster, like some I just did not over invest in that much. And the last time, there's always going to be FOMO. That's what happened in the past, right? And I want to go back to this actually. Maybe I didn't go far enough back, but there's a lot of FOMO when it comes to teams when they come out. Are they going to be used for something? And I remember this when it came to Underworld with Mr. Negative. A lot of us thought that Underworld was going to come back for a hard requirement for an event, and it never did. But there was that looming, like, that threat that it was going to come back, and that we'd have to be, because these were characters that a lot of people did skip, and it ends up being PvP characters. And a lot of us Infestation was another one actually, with Big Time Spidey, wherever he is, somewhere around here. And because there's a lot of people that decided not to build him, and there was that looming threat that Infestation was going to be hard required for something, and that never came around, right? And that was a lot of character. It was only one new character before reworks, which is quite nasty. And so what's better, that looming threat of the FOMO that we don't know if that new character is going to be used for something in the future, or being told up front that it is and we have to do it. That's basically the difference of what happened before, is that we were kind of trying to second guess or guess ahead or jump ahead about who was going to be required for something. Now we're being told early about who's being required. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? And is that going to lead to more of these sort of hard requirements now that we have basically a prescribed new raid with specific traits? That's what I'm curious about from you guys, because I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that if I like knowing in advance, it seems good because then obviously I can plan ahead. But I'm concerned that maybe it might lead to not having that much choice over my roster, right? And I'm glad that that's being addressed when it comes to Dark Dimension, when it comes to the Age of Vex and Professor Xavier, at least for as far as we know. But I don't want to go back the other way and have less say over what I need to build, because realistically, raids are really important. I said that from the get go. Raids are super, super, super important. So if there's handfuls of red gear in this and T4s as rewards, like if it's good, then I'm gonna want to do that, right? Because my whole alliance is gonna want to do that, and I don't want to let them down. And so that's my biggest concern. Let me know in the comments down below how you feel, if you've had some time to kind of digest some of the information. If you haven't checked out the blog related to the new raids, it's not that long. I also had a video from it yesterday, so go check that out if you're interested. Otherwise, I'm just keen to know how you guys feel about this again, I guess, and whether or not I'm going to have any say over my roster in the future. That's it for now, and I'll see you guys on the blog post tomorrow. Boilon signing out.